And we are starting. Good evening, day, morning, whatever time it is at your place. Everyone, very nice seeing you here. We gonna start it right away. This was a crazy couple of days and with a lot of stuff. The most interesting things, obviously, was that right after I released a video about the possible Russian offensive from the north and what they will be trying to achieve, we have Russians starting their offensive of the north. But obviously, everything in order. We're going to cover it today, and we're going to do it in good details. We're going to have a good talk. Finally, we're going to be able to talk it through. I'm going to answer all of your questions. But please let us start by giving a huge hand and putting some love for the moderating team. This channel, while I am the face of the channel and I'm like running the content and everything, but this channel is more than just this channel. It's also the community, it's the Discord, it's making sure that we are free from the Russian bots and trolls so they don't pollute our environment, so we actually can have very reasonable and proper conversations. So huge thanks to the moderating team. Everyone, I appreciate you very much, and I hope that everyone in the chat appreciate that as well. People are doing a lot of work and they are really good at it. Thank you. Beyond that, we should give our credit to not credit, but like we should give our congratulations to Jake Bro. As I understood, Jake Bro, which is much bigger channel than this one, and I'm pretty sure a lot of you are also watching him. Maybe you don't, it doesn't really matter, but maybe you don't approve his content or you don't like his content. Whatever is the case, if you watch him, he still just got 40, so it's still something worth celebrating. So huge cheers to Jake Bro, a really great member of the pro-Ukraine community and a great creator indeed. He was also the motivator for me to try starting some of my videos, and well, look where this got me. I got my own hat now. Anyway, huge thanks to everyone that watches the channel, watches the video. I really appreciate it, guys. So let's start our talks today. I have kind of like the general plan and general idea of what I want to talk about today. I obviously want to kind of focus with talking with you, so I want to answer your questions. And if certain parts of what I was having in my mind will not be asked, I will just come back to it. But it's interesting. Key Hansen, thank you so much for 5 gifted membership, and Adamantium, thank you so much for 20 Norwegian kroners, and Slava Azov, indeed, my friend. All right, let's start with the questions. Ali right away asking, is Shoigu the next for a window fight? So if you didn't know, Shoigu has handed in his resignation. Oh, sorry, I forgot to take off the headphones. I like listening to the music at the start as well as you do. And supposedly Shoigu has sent in his resignation, and that means that Russia will probably have a new Minister of Defense. Is it good? Is it bad? It is unclear right now. Shoigu could have been fired. There are also rumors that Shoigu has been just moved to another position. Putin doesn't usually betray people that are loyal to him. We know that the Shoigu was loyal to Putin, and we generally know that people in Putin's circle are staying with Putin almost no matter what. While they're loyal, there is fine, right? And that's what's happened. Like, so people, when they're talking about a window or a poison tea or anything like that, we need to understand that most of these deaths are coming from disloyalty, not from because they're incompetent. So Shoigu, I think, was fired or moved or something else. Maybe there is a good chance that is because of his incompetence. But I feel that this is still because he's still loyal. There's not going to be anything that's going to be happening to him. But in any case, it is right now a little bit too early to say. I'm going to look for more experts for this to look into this and so on. Adamantium, what happened to Gerasimov? Did something happen to Gerasimov? I thought he's still in charge, no? Did I miss something? Love the MAGA hat. Yes, I actually like this one. Like, I thought I will get myself a MAGA hat just for the funsies of it. Jokes aside, I really like it. It's like quite simple. It's okay hat, and it also has like a trident on the back, which is pretty cool. Like, come on, if the camera will focus, then yeah, there we go. So I just kind of like it. It's pretty nice. No, Gerasimov was not killed in Crimea strike. The general that was hit in the Crimea strike was Gerasimov, but it was not the Gerasimov you're talking about. It was different Gerasimov, not the Gerasimov, the Gerasimov, like the big chief of the Russian military, not that Gerasimov, the other Gerasimov, just the same last name. Okay, Can Edath, by the way, thank you so much, man, for everything that you did in latest times. I do follow, and huge thanks for everything. Hi, ask you this even so often. What should we ask our representatives? Do we keep asking for Ukraine to receive tanks and ammo shipments? Yes. So we need to understand that right now the message is delivered, right? For the most part, right now we overcame the biggest issues that stood in Ukraine way. There is a lot of things that probably we could do more in the West, and we should do more from my perspective. And that's why I'm advertising to do that and to call your representatives. But I think the main part right now is to kind of do the reminder with any topics. Just, some event happened, we should still continue supporting Ukraine. Russia is not letting go. Russia is attacking from the north. Please support Ukraine more. Right now, it's important to maintain the presence of the situation to the politicians. They need to be aware that the electorate is interested in the topic, and it's interested in making sure that this topic keeps being brought up to. So any reminder to your direct representatives is highly valued, and it makes a big difference. If you don't think it makes difference, you're wrong, because I'm pretty sure that one of the reasons why Micro Johnson flipped to support Ukraine is because of the public pressure. So thank you for everyone that does write their representatives still, and will continue doing so. Thank you so much. Kate Hennes, does Ukraine use the Getman vessel weapons carrier? I am gonna Google what it is. It's not something that appeared. Getman vessel response carrier. I fail to find what it is, the Getman vessel weapons carrier. So maybe I just I don't understand what it means. So sorry. Rook Smith, do you think that naval base in Russian occupied Georgia could be a potential target for the F-16s? What? Do you think that a naval base in the Russian occupied... you mean okay, so the part of Georgia that is occupied by the Russians could be a potential target for the F-16s. Yes, I mean, yes, but also there is a little bit of a... we're like, you're writing already 10 steps before. There are a lot more prevalent targets and a lot more closer distance. And I think that F-16s, before they will switch to the ground campaign, I think first and foremost F-16s will be engaged in the air campaign first and foremost. Because the biggest issue that Ukrainians are having is that they're flying very old planes. And these old planes have also very old armaments. And while some of the Western armaments have been adapted to be launched from the Ukrainian planes, it's not ideal. For example, as an anti-air system, Ukrainian planes can rarely be used because a lot of their munitions is you need to guide it all the way up until the impact, and they usually have shorter range munitions and they have shorter range radars, so they need to, with all these negative traits, they need to fight against dominant Russian Air Force, and that can also fire something like fire and forget anti-air missiles. So I feel, and this is purely my feeling and speculation, I do feel that F-16s primarily will be utilized to clear the anti-air, to clear the air targets and anti-air systems. I don't feel that naval bases is something that Ukraine is very like looking at extremely, it was extremely high priority. Okay, Hoffman de Frenchi, hi. Ukraine retreated a few villages back to the border with Russia north of Kharkiv. Do you think this is an interesting move? Personally, I think that it's a very good move. Okay, there's a lot of things to unpack. So I don't understand the category of interesting or not interesting move. Like it's a weird category to consider. The fact that Ukraine retreated from somewhere, I think it's a little bit of mixing up of what's actually happening. Is Russia entered some of the border region with force, and they were able to push out the force of Ukrainians that was stationed there, and basically they took over that border area for the time beings, as Ukrainians are now receiving their reinforcements. So I'm not sure if interesting is the way that I would put it, but I will come back to the topic later. In general, so far, nothing terrible happened. So far, the only thing that was prevalent from all sides of the spectrum is the media panic and social media panic about this great Russian offensive. Once we're going to start decoding it step by step, you're going to see just how actually not significant is what's happening right now on the front lines around Kharkiv. Marcus OGT, Russia and Putin basically speedrun World War One. They had their Tannenberg at Kiev. This now seems like a Borusilyov offensive, but even more stupid. Your take. My take is that I'm not a military historian and I have no idea what you're talking about. So I am pretty sure, like, anyone that is military historian in the chat, could you answer to Marcus OTT with your opinion about whether or not this is the same as Tannenberg or Borusilov offensive or not offensive, whatever. So not a military historian, not a military expert right here. I follow the actual situation. I don't have depth of historic knowledge of military history. So sorry. Try Laserpig. William John, is it possible that the real goal isn't Kharkiv, that it's Kapusnik? I am imagining by Kapusnik, which Kapusnik means like the cabbage soup. So I'm imagining that instead of Kapusnik, which is the cabbage soup, you mean Kupiansk, which is the name of the city in the area. So that the main target is not the cabbage soup, but the encirclement of the northeast Ukrainian forces. Yes, ish. However, there are reasons. I'll come back to this. I'll come back to this topic. It's good that you asked this question. Right now, the current target is weird. Let's just say it's not obvious. It's very clear that they are looking more towards Kapusnik. Sorry, Kupiansk. I cannot hold it. Like, it's too funny. But you can't. Russians are trying to take over the cabbage soup. Oh my god, this is such a low level humor. I'm so bad at this. Anyway, yes. Is Ukraine producing artillery? Yes, Avery. Yes, they do. Canada, not a question. Thanks for the daily ability to help Ukraine and get a mug ahead. I received mine early and it's good material. Thank you for involving me getting a great souvenir to my grandchildren. Absolutely, Canada. Thank you so much for everything that you do. Hans Eriksson, have you heard anything about the Swedish combat boats CB90, if they have arrived? I've seen some reports of certain boats being delivered. I don't remember if it was these Swedish boats or some other boats. I have seen some recent deliveries of boats for sure. Yes, I've seen the reports on that. I haven't followed on the deployments and so on, but we also need to we need to understand that we are witnessing maybe like 5% of what is happening on the front lines. So it's yeah. Yes. Frank Schifrin, thank you so much for $1. That's very nice of you. Yes. Little Bobs. There are reports that the Russians are using less infantry fighting vehicles and armored personnel carriers, or usually they're referred to just armored fighting vehicles, so AFVs. Uh, is this due to them running low on vehicles, or are they consolidating their armor for the larger assault? There are multiple ways how it's been discussed. Like, I follow some of the specific professionals, specific niche experts in this area, which are extremely boring to listen to for majority of people, but I have to do it anyway. And there are kind of two major theories that are running. The theory number one is that potentially all of the estimates of Russian production are just so low that the Russian production is just not able to output comparative number of IFVs and APCs to match the needs of the military. So while they're still having them on the stockpiles, they're just not able to refurbish them. And because we kind of already, they run so far down the stock that they don't really have a lot of well-running equipment. So every single infantry fighting vehicle or armored fighting vehicle needs to be basically almost like a build anew from the parts, like a Lego. You need to disassemble and assemble from like 3-1. So that is one theory. The other theory is that the Russians are trying to gather up the offensive for specific offensives. So they're trying to preserve some of these coming in armors when they will have bigger moves on the front lines, and they use instead Chinese golf carts or like motorcycles to substitute. This is mostly explained by the fact that usually there is a problem with reporting in the Russian chain of command, and that a lot of reporting is misreporting. For example, if a unit has one running a infantry fighting vehicle, but they technically have on paper 3, and then they ordered like to attack, and they cannot like report bad news to their, because that still is prevalent in the Russian military. They don't report bad news, so they say, no, all our vehicles are fine, we'll continue our offensives. Whereas in reality, the commander of that unit, he's like, okay, I'm going to save up the armor in case of inspection comes in, and so on. So there is an idea that the less use of infantry fighting vehicles is because of there is not like a major offensive, so people, commanders at the local level are trying to save more armor than they should be using, because they used way too much in times before. And I'm pretty sure the truth is somewhere in between and maybe something other, but those are the two major hypotheses that are being discussed in these like expert community. You choose whichever you prefer. I don't have precise information on one or the other. Are you getting 8A Warthogs? I hope not, because damn, perfect for lighting up Ruskies in the Gatling gun goes brrrt. Yeah, David. That is just silly. Like, that's just silly. Like, my humor is but like, yeah, A10 goes Ruskies, brr, that's just silly. Sorry, I cannot answer that. Hoffman the Frenchie, do you think the Caesar is the best RT that the Ukrainians got in this conflict? From what the Russia says, it's one that gives them the most problems. They only destroyed 5 of them. Slava Ukraini. Yes, Caesars has proven themselves to be absolutely amazing. Incredible even. High mobility, relatively easy to operate, relatively simple to repair, which is very, very important. Like, we've heard times and times again about these super precise Panzerhaubitze 2000, which were just not solved for like extended amounts of work, whereas the French Caesars did. And French Caesars basically have proven themselves like a major workhorse of the artillery. A lot of really, really good stuff came from Caesar. The improvements to Ukrainian on Bogdana 155 millimeters were done based on the Caesar. So Caesars have been incredible, absolutely amazing. Yeah, they really have been built and used like a proper army workhorse. It's really good. We talked about Shoigu. It's too early to say, so I'm going to come back. Andy, are the Russian nationalists who attacked Belgorod helping Ukraine to defend Kharkiv Oblast? Yes, but also, Andy, I always want to underscore that there is very, very few of them. Very, very, very few Russians are fighting on Ukrainian side. We talk about these Russian nationalists and the pro-democratic Russia, the Legion, but it's maybe a couple of thousands of people at max. At maximum, absolute maximum. It's very, 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 very few people that are there in these Russian legions. Archer is good, but Archer is, again, sophisticated to fix, and also Archer, I mean, not that big difference from a Caesar, to be honest. It's not that big. Like, the only major thing is that supposedly Archer shoots by itself. Well, I mean, it's probably a nice thing to show off on the exposition, but when you're considering like the actual work, then the difference is not as noticeable. At least not in the quantities that archers are present. If there would be like 400 archers on the battlefield, having one less crew, for example, for the artillery, that would be significant. But they're not. So there are these, like, how many? It was like 20 archers or something that was delivered to Ukraine. Maybe, like, I'm going to say 50, just to make sure that Swedish guys don't get offended. Let's say 50 archers have been delivered. It still is a drop on a bucket. Little Bob, strange question, but will Ukraine use its new corvette warship at any point in the war? Given Ukrainian ingenuity, do you think they will become a Black Sea naval power post-war? I think it's too early to discuss this. I don't see how Ukraine can use any of their warships right now in the sea. They are able to control the sea asymmetrically. I don't think they need to go head-to-head with Russians. Yeah. Also, HPT, I also heard about Shoigu having some other positions. Again, too early to say. I'm going to look at what's happening and then we can discuss. Charlie the Goat, hey, I'm sure Ukraine will not announce exactly the date of F-16s to make an appearance. They say a few weeks. Do you think that they will just show up early and come in hitting hard right away? Yes, but okay, so the first F-16s will be very low in number, so the impact will be limited. It's not going to be like 100 F-16s just lift off of Ukraine and just everything goes like red on the Russian side. That's not what it's going to be. It's going to be couple of planes here, couple of planes there, couple of planes here, couple of planes there. You're just going to get spotted, and some of the things that used to be attributed to one aerial strikes now going to be attributed to the F-16 strikes. We're going to see an increase in strikes, but it's going to be relatively low at the beginning. It's going to take time for Ukraine to get the fleet of F-16s to be up to par. Lou, Denmark is key to Baltic Sea, Russian warship, Orsund, Bornholm, etc. I don't know what this refers to. Oliver, hey Georgie, I've been a bit late to the stream. How are your eyes doing? Thank you so much. They're better. The problem with my eyes were that my eyes just were hurting a lot. I went to my GP. My GP said I'm having an eye infection. So he gave me 1 antibiotics. I went to the full treatment. It didn't help. Then I went in second time. He looked at it, says, I'm going to give you stronger antibiotics. He gave me stronger antibiotics. So I went to the full treatment again. And then he basically finally sent me to the specialist. Specialist looked at my eyes and says, you have a severe case of allergy. Basically, for months, my eyes have been running on dry, so to say. And that caused a huge irritation in my eyes. So now I have very targeted, strong antihistamines that I'm dripping into my eyes, plus the moisturizer. It's been helping a lot, and it's really, really good that it's getting better. So thank you so much for being, but it was just like that moment was a little bit unclear why my eyes hurt, and if it's an infection, why the antibiotics doesn't work, and I was a little bit worried. The fall of Crimean Bridge this year. We'll see. RC, everything depends on the resources. We are in resource war. If Ukraine has resources, the bridge will go down. If Ukraine doesn't have resources, the bridge will not go down. Very simple. Michał, what about other distractions like Serbia, which had EU aspirations, Georgia, others? It feels that the part of the question is missing. You mean distractions in a sense of like Georgia, you mean like if Serbia attacking Kosovo? Yeah. I mean, okay. So the good news is that feels that let's take the Israel situation. So Israel's situation has completely stolen the media, mostly because of public outcry. Yet we don't see that the help to Ukraine is decreasing, which is actually, in my perspective, is a perfect situation for Ukraine to be in. When Ukrainian defense against the Russian invasion is finally taking out of the hype cycle, is taking out as a political topic cycle, and instead it's just being something that we just understand that we need to work on and work towards. I think this is the best situation Ukraine needs to be in. And that's why it's very important for Ukraine to be still heard by the direct representatives by your direct representatives. So they kind of keep the mind that Ukraine is still important. It's now just out of this drama cycle, which I think is very, very good for Ukraine. The less Ukraine is in a drama cycle, the better it is. Obviously, we can get on the other end of the spectrum where Ukraine is being forgotten, which I hope will not happen. And I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people, you including, that will make sure of this. So while everyone is mad about Israel, Ukraine is having it better. Is it too early to judge Syrskyi's work? If not, what's your assessment for him? Yeah, it is too early to judge his work. So far, his work was okay. Okay. The problem is that, how do I put it? So we have nothing to compare to, all right? We have Syrskyi that came in a dire situation, and he was running basically on fumes. There was little to no resources coming into Ukraine, and he was working with those little resources as much as he could. There was a loss of Avdiivka. There was a loss of Ocheretine, maybe some other parts. We don't know how Syrskyi would perform if he would have a resource. So right now it is unclear. We don't have another general that was commanding Ukrainian military when Ukraine didn't have any resources. We had the initial stage of the war, but I think it's healthier to consider that in general there are 3 wars that Ukraine is fighting. And feel me right over here. So there has been 3 stages of the same war or whatever, because these wars have been so different that it's very inaccurate to compare them. The war number 1 is the defensive war that Ukraine fought when the Russians attacked from all sides. It was a partisan warfare where Russians were just charging towards their destinations, and Ukrainians were able to inflict significant damages with literally just like firearms and tank, like some of the anti-tank weapons and some of the loosely connected units. That was the first attempt. Then the second war happened when Russia, or the second stage of the war, happened when Russia was attacking Ukraine with the capabilities that it had of their regular army. It was the Russian army, or what was left of it, with some of the reinforcement from their like high level storage facilities where they had modern equipment, where they still had a lot of their well trained troops. And that was the time when Ukraine was defending against Russians, and it culminated with Ukrainians withholding all of that assault against them, and fighting back against that assault and essentially defeating Russian army, regular army, crushing it, freeing up Kherson, freeing up Kharkiv. After that, we came into the third war, where, like in the second war, it was Russian regular army versus Ukrainian mobilized army. And then the third stage of the war, which is we are right now, is that the Russian mobilized, they also not just mobilized, they also took completely opened their doomsday storage facilities to basically say, we're gonna fight you until the last piece of our equipment is still running. Russia took all brakes off, right? Right now, the way that Russia is spending their equipment, it's basically by the end of this war, they will have no military whatsoever. And basically, that's when the Russia went all in, where Putin says, like, no, I'm going to go until the end. And now it became mobilized army versus mobilized army, the resource attrition warfare. And that attrition warfare is very, very different from what we saw in the second stage of the war. We saw Ukrainians try to fight with the resource advantage that they gain against the regular Russian army, against the Russians, but it didn't succeed because the Russians already mobilized and they were well prepared. And then we came into the whole new grinding, slow situation where two massive mobilized armies are now clashing with each other. And that's why resources became the number one discussion topic and number one dominant topic. Because when we were talking about, for example, the mobilized Ukrainian army versus the unmobilized Russian army, then some of the abilities for Ukraine, for example, to penetrate Russian front, to maneuver them out, those things were possible at that stage, but are completely impossible now. They require completely different set and amounts of resources, which Syrskyi never had. He came into position with a shortage of resources, and he's been working with shortage of resources so far. So we have zero examples to compare Syrskyi to. I hope this kind of runs up the longer explanations. Is the British NLAW still being used? I have not heard about it for a long time. Yes, it is used because it's not a game-changing weapon. It's how many times are we hearing about javelins being fired? Like very rarely, very rarely. At the start of the war, it was the all hype. So we need to understand that the weapons and the hype weapons have gone too far. We don't have the situation in which NLAW is so prevalent that it's something newsworthy, right? For NLAW to work, it needs to be a very specific thing happen on the front line. Because majority of the work of the NLAW right now is being drawn by the kamikaze drones. So disable the armor. But if there is a unit that is defending in a trench and they just happen to have 3 NLAWs, they will use them and they will do good job. But will they film it on camera and send it over while we have 10,000 drone footages? Probably not. So the fact that you're not seeing it doesn't mean that it's not helping. It is. Do you know if Lapin is in charge of the Russian offensive north of Kharkiv? Yes, Krok, you are absolutely right. It is indeed General Lapin that is commanding at the north. Sorry, Georgies, why is Ukraine still handcuffed by restrictions on Western munitions when Russia has none? I don't know. Like, man, like I've asked these questions for the last 2 years, and I still don't have a good answer. No one has good answer. Everyone says like, oh, it's about fear, escalation, but no, it's not. Like, Ukraine has been used everything. We also hear that there are technically green lights to fire from like UK and so on. And in the end, it's like nuclear threat, nuclear threat, nuclear threat. It's like a really bad cycle. And I have no idea why these restrictions still exist. Let's put it this way. I have no idea why these restrictions were there in the first place. Why did we need to open our mouths to say which red lines we are setting for ourselves? Who asked for this? Whose bright idea was it to just say, this is our red line, we will not cross this? Can you just shut up? Like, can you, like, you want this accepted? Fine. Don't allow Ukrainians. Just don't tell it. Don't talk about it. No rant. No. Please, peace. I'm not a ranting guy anymore. I am detoxing. We'll see how it goes. All right, couple more questions, and then we're going to talk about the Kharkiv offensive, right? Because we've been going through this for a while. I need MAGA hat. Who is selling it? It's on the ukrainematters.shop. It's on our shop. We are selling it. Get your MAGA hat right now. Yeah, personal promotion. Oh my god, I'm so awful at this. Yes, but it's a great MAGA hat, and with my shop, the principle is the same as with the YouTube channel. So the whatever the shop makes, it needs for operations, it's cover. The rest of the profits, as much as we can, we're gonna send to Ukraine to support Ukrainian armed forces. And then we're also going to put something away for additional bigger projects that we're working on. Given Russia is trying to build a railway through the land bridge, will the destruction of the Kerch bridge only have minimal effect on Russian logistics? Is the railway even complete yet? The railway is almost complete. The destruction of Crimean Bridge isn't as significant anymore because I think we are in a full attrition mode. So like Russia is going to be running out of equipment and so on. Therefore, I think that it is important to destroy that bridge. I think it should go down, but I think I'm not completely sure that it's as important of a target as it is. Currently, Ukraine doesn't have the ability to get to Crimea. There is about 5, 6, 7 steps in strategic big steps that Ukraine needs to solve before they even can try to attempt in Crimea. So it's you need to solve problems as they come. This is not the problem that requires solution for now. The political victory, yes, I agree, but Luis Zuniga, where are the minefields? I'm not sure what this question is addressed towards. I mean, the minefields are there? I don't know what to answer to this question. Gary Miller, when are the F-16 planes arriving and what differences will they make? I've talked extensively about F-16s and a lot of the impact that they will make. The important thing for us to understand is that number matters. This is something that in this, in military terms, that's not like numbers. It means like mass. So it's like how much mass do you have? So in the same sense, the mass of where is the war? yes, that's the same kind of question. Where is the war? Where is the war at? Sorry, distraction. Yes, so F-16s are important and they will make a difference, but they will make a difference that is based on the available mass that is available for use by Ukrainians. If it's a bunch, then they can have limited impact on specific targets, on strikes, or provide additional anti-air protection. If we're talking about 30 planes, then they will have the impact of maybe small area in which they can secure the air control, allow Ukraine to do localized small offensives, will be able potentially to push through and secure against any kind of bigger Russian advances, stuff like that. If we're talking what Ukraine requires, which is a mass of about 100 to 150 planes, at that moment, there can be a specific direction, whether it be south, southeast, east, or northern direction, if you want, in which Ukraine can establish air control, air dominance, if you want, and execute complex land maneuvers. That is the impact of F-16s in short. All right, I'm gonna stop it here. So let's talk about the Kharkiv offensive. All right, let me see if I can find my deep state map. In short, the offensive is a bit of how would I put it? A bit too big of a word for something like this. So what happened? Well, after we posted video, it definitely was because we posted videos. Russian watched my videos, and then they're like, hey, this guy said that we should attack Kharkiv. So let's attack Kharkiv. So they watched my videos, and then they're like, it's a good idea, let's do it. I was talking in the video that Russians in general, in this area over here, in pink, because of course it's in pink, in this area over here, oh, sorry, it's in Ukrainian, oh my God, what is happening? Yes, I'm going to switch to English, so it's understandable. So in this area over here, there is about 50,000 troops. And everyone looked at it like, oh my God, 50,000, that's a lot. That's a lot. The problem is that it's 50,000 in these whole areas. That's not too much for the areas. And we know that Russians have been more or less gathering up around the area of Belgorod and towards the area of Sumy, so somewhere here. And they're still gathering up. So the forces that are dedicated to the southern direction right now, roughly estimated, go into about 8,000 dedication that we're seeing right now moving towards Ukrainian border. That's the part. It is expected actually that Russians potentially are gonna also move towards Sumy, which is good. What is Russia achieving? So let's try to go backwards, right? So let's start with Russia is just gonna roll over Ukraine, right? Let's go from the absolutely crazy scenario to find out what is the more realistic scenario, and I will kind of guide you all through this, and we're gonna understand and discuss logic all together. So scenario number one is this. No, sorry. The incursion points is over here. So Russia comes in here, and then they reach the end of Ukraine. Is this a realistic scenario for 50,000 troops? Well, probably not. 50,000 troops, that was the number of dead soldiers approximately around Avdiivka. So for Russians to take this area over here, the Avdiivka, the total count was, I believe, like either 35 to 45,000 dead Russians. That was what took Russia to take this area over here. So if we say, okay, so taking all over Ukraine, is 50,000 enough? Well, clearly not. All right, not all of Ukraine. So they're attacking Kharkiv region. Maybe they want to take over the Kharkiv region, this area over here. Well, Kharkiv is a more than 1 million people city. If we can judge that Avdiivka, and where Russia lost about 35 to 45,000 troops, was about 30,000 people city pre-war, then if Kharkiv is 1 million people city, even if we divide it by half, Russia would definitely need in a good hundreds of thousands of troops to even consider potentially consider taking Kharkiv. So taking the whole region is no go. Taking the city of Kharkiv, by the same logic, is also a no go. Russia just doesn't have the resources that they need to, for example, encircle such a huge city, because it is huge. It is enormously huge, without even talking about trying to move through it. It's not enough. So that's probably not an option. What are the other plans then? Well, there are possibilities. What we can say that Russia can get here. They can potentially reach Kharkiv. That is a possibility. There is no big cities in between. Plus, Russian supply line is pretty close from Belgorod, so they can get a lot of their equipment very close, and then they can fire a lot, so there's a lot of air support. So they can try to retake this area over here, which is okay. That's an option. Then they can try to retake this area over here, which is towards the Kapusnik or Kupiansk, to be more precise. Sorry, stupid joke. Where Ukrainians' main kind of point of interest for this whole northern area is. So this has kind of been the main targets. It's a huge logistics hub. It's a great, you can even see here, you can see these yellow roads, it's highways. So the fact that the highways are coming all to this town without even going through something like a railway map and everything else, you already kind of understand that this is a key logistics point. So potentially, Russia needs to get towards here. Okay, so this is already something that we can talk about. If we are taking measurement and say, so from the border to Kupiansk, Russia needs to travel 88.65 kilometers. That's the direction that Russia needs to get to Kupiansk. Is it a lot or is it not? Okay, let's compare it to the eastern side. So if we go to the Avdiivka direction, that Russia has been advancing extremely steadily. I'm taking Avdiivka because it's the most recent and it's where Russians were having the biggest success, right? Big air quotes, because success while losing so many men and armor is, I'm not sure how one, not any army in the world that can call it success. So Avdiivka had a very particular situation, if you remember. By the start of this latest Russian offensive, they had essentially half encircled Avdiivka from two sides, generally speaking. So that was the situation. But even if we disregard that and say, okay, Russia took Avdiivka in about, it was 5 months-ish. Okay, let's say 5 months. So we go from here to here, where they are in Ocheretina. That is 23 kilometers. Oh, that's not a lot, is it? No. So if we compare it to an Avdiivka front line, we know that Pokrovsk is the big target of Russian. So Pokrovsk is located right over here. So the Russians would need to then get from Avdiivka to all the way to Pokrovsk and beyond to be comparable to what they need to achieve in Kharkiv region, right? So when we're trying to measure the amount of forces Russia lost in trying to capture Avdiivka compared to how much they moved, it's not that big, not that good, right? It's not that great. because they're losing this, like these 50,000 force, I wouldn't achieve a lot here. It's like that's pretty far away. So if we are going by the same kind of metric, and we're just pulling numbers together, right? So we're just pulling things together. So imagine that Russians would need to get from here to here if they would get Avdiivka level direction. If they would get the same way as Avdiivka in half a year, so they would get about to Stary Saltiv, to here. That's the extent that Russia would probably. I don't think they would ever be able to get, but this is basically where Avdiivka size force would be completely gone. What does Russia need this for? Why does Russia this need? And now we go into the two more realistic scenarios. So all of the scenarios about, oh my God, Russia just wants to collapse this whole area, or Russia wants to take Kharkiv, the math doesn't add up. And I'm hoping I guided you through that thought process. And it's a simple one. There is like a lot of different exercises that you can do to understand that both the left option and the right option, without even talking about both, are not just unrealistic, they're outright ludicrous with the forces that Russia has deployed. So what Russia can do to achieve, what Russia can achieve with this incursion and potential, going forward, taking some part of that northern part of Kharkiv, because not like as much as it is a pity to lose any part of the Ukrainian territory, nothing of importance is there. Like I know this sounds harsh, because especially for the people that live there, for the people and inhabitants, but we're trying to kind of think about the war at large, like how can Ukraine win the war? This attack, in strategic sense, when Russia takes this, brings nothing. It brings nothing. So now we come back to two major points. Point number one, the politically stupid one. Or let's start with the politically stupid, then we're going to talk about politically not so stupid. So the first politically stupid one. The politically stupid one is Putin recently said that he wants to have a demilitarized zone in between Russia and Belgorod, to basically prevent Ukrainian forces to go on the offensives on the Russian territory and instead fight Ukrainians on Ukrainian territory in these nearby border regions. Which is, yeah, sure. Okay, that's an objective. But does it mean anything major for Ukrainians? Well, no, not really. Not really. It just means that now there's additional area that they need to fight for on their own territory, which is unfortunate. I don't think that Ukrainians would want that, but it's an additional directions that Russians would need to control. That's an additional directions where Russians would need to dedicate resources. And here we come to the first potentially actually semi-relevant point, which is that at the moment Ukraine has been strained for resources. Ukraine has been struggling to maintain resources. And this is actually, I really want to talk with you about this, chat, because we sometimes when I'm reading comments, I'm absolutely getting flabbergasted. Because it's like people hear when I speak that Ukraine is low on resources, but they kind of like don't think past that sentence. It's like, oh, Ukraine low resources, but Ukraine should still go on the offensive, right? It's like that sentence exists in a vacuum. And I would like us to maybe like made a list, or you can like write in a chat what your idea, what a party at war that is struggling for resources cannot do. Because in my perspective, it's very easy. Resource, you don't have enough manpower, you don't have enough ammunition, so you need to take from people from other directions that are less monitored. You need to compromise on defenses, you need to compromise on border defenses, you need to compromise on other many things, because that's what the lack of resources means. And for me, lack of resources is that. But it seems that for a lot of people, specifically like for some of the pro-Ukrainian community. It's like, oh my God, Russians are coming and they're able to take some of the early settlements near the border, and Ukrainians were not there to stop them and didn't have like an overwhelming fire suppression on them and so on. And I'm just like an idiot yelling at the screen. It's like, what do you think lack of resources mean? And this is frustrating me to no end. So Ukraine is fighting with the lack of resources, including the manpower resources, including the ammunition resources, the monitoring resources, the intelligent resources, everything. Russia just have more of this. And right now, resources are starting to flow back into Ukraine because right now, US has finally signed up their agreements to support Ukraine. The European Union is slow, not just the European Union, the Europe in general, slowly but surely is getting production. Putin's plan was to make sure that that's one of his possible victory conditions, is to make sure that Ukraine doesn't get the resources it needs, and then Putin can essentially try to dominate Ukraine. The problem with Putin and this plan is Putin is too greedy. Because the correct way for him to play this out would be try to show dominance, try to show goodwill in practice, and then try to make sure that the political parties in the European Union and in the other Western countries would start talking about, hey, Putin is not such a bad guy. Why don't we have a negotiation with him? Instead, Putin is showing himself being a genocidal maniac. And whenever there was a shortage of resources for Ukraine, instead of trying to, save what he has taken, try to get some kind of peace deal, and then rebuild his army, rebuild his military, come out of the table with semi-winner because he still took a lot of territory, right? He was like, oh, Ukraine is not being supplied by resources. Well, goody go. So that means we can do more. And instead of just stopping where he is now wanting more. As any dictator, he is simple. He is very predictable. So as soon as we showed weakness in the Western world, he's like, I'm going to not just take an arm, I'm going to take an arm, a leg, and your liver as well. And he says, I want this all. So now there is a little bit of a time where Ukraine just doesn't have the resources. And Russian military, they want to push their advantage. Specifically, they want to push their advantage in the Donbass region. And because Russian military right now is running on those resources that they have from their long storages from the Soviet Union, which is not endless, it's huge, but it's not endless. But at this moment, Ukraine just doesn't have. So what Russia can do is they can open a front line here. They can open a front line here. They can maybe open a front line here or something. And that will require Ukraine to respond, to dedicate resources to make sure that more of the what's being supplied to them goes to defend these front lines, then it goes to defend, for example, Donbass. The problem with this is that it's unclear that this will work. There are many experts that are saying that potentially it will not matter that much. That Ukraine, like that the 50,000 that Russia has here, they are maybe okay as a distraction, but there's also reports that they're severely undersupplied. There is a lot of problems with morale in this units and so on. So worst case scenario in this version is that Russia will jump in and try to put some kind of pressure on Ukraine to draw Ukrainian resources out. And this is the first major kind of more or less realistic scenario that we could consider. And I hope I explained it well in details. But you might ask me, what is the second one? What is the second one? Well, the second victory scenario is for Putin to break Ukraine, to literally break Ukrainians. Ukrainians are well known that they have a lot of varying opinions, let's put it this way. Ukrainian unity is a relatively new concept for Ukrainians themselves, and they are still trying to find themselves how to deal with the Russian offensive. This has been covered from many sides, including the ability for Ukrainians to mobilize, including for ability for Ukrainians to keep up the difference between people in the peaceful cities living their own peaceful lives and not thinking about the war, and people on the front lines not understanding why there is no major support and why there are no war rails to deliver everything that is required to the front lines. That is the kind of dichotomy of Ukrainian state, and that's how Ukrainians are. That's just their nature of the people, and it's very, very strong. It's very, very strong when threatened. So the problem is that Russia is now on the something that can be described as a psychological / military operation. So what they want to build is they want to build a sense of dread, despair, and hopelessness in Ukrainian society to drive the wedge and help build the pathway for the Russian propaganda to divide the Ukrainian society. They want to do this by doing these things, by saying, oh, look, every time they're in the news, Ukraine is not winning anywhere. Like, Russia is still advancing. They're still taking villages. They're still advancing, you know. Now there's also a border that is being taken away from Ukraine. When you think about this, and as we talked about this just now, you know, in a military sense, in the numbers and in like logical thinking, that doesn't make a lot of change, you know, because strategically Ukraine is not losing here, right? Russia is expending resource at an incredible rate. The expenditure is well over what Russia can supply at some point. At some point, the stockpiles will run out and Russia will run out of resources. And at that moment, Ukrainians will roll over the Russians. But right now, Putin still has this 1.5, 2 years where he has this window of opportunity. So this campaign has been going on for over a year now. It's a campaign where Russians have been putting all of the efforts to make sure that the news headlines are dominated by the, oh, Russia is still advancing. That all of the Western shill analysts are starting to write articles about how Ukraine is losing, how losing of this particular one settlement is gonna be the end of Ukraine for all times. Truly, truly, believe me, I'm totally not a sold out agent. And all of these other media narratives that Russia is building to try to discourage Ukrainians from their resistance to Russians. And now they're just opening up another path, droving in narrative as like, you know, oh my God, there was like no defense on the border. Russians just came in through the border, like in the columns, and there was like no resistance. Ukrainians just run. It's like, yes, but what about those hundreds of videos of Russians being struck as they were approaching the border and as they were in these villages? It's like, what about all of these dead Russians? How did they appear? And it's like, where are the minefields at the north? It's like, what about these videos with Russian trucks being blown up on the minefields? It's like, no, it doesn't happen. I read the news or I saw a talking head that said, oh, Ukraine is totally collapsing. Ooh, no defense lines. Ooh, time to surrender. So all of these narratives are part of the Russian plan and Russian propaganda to make sure that they discourage the Ukrainian society. And even within Ukrainian society, there is plenty of people that are, for one reason or another, either because they're stupid, or because they're evil, or because they are sold out to Russia, for example. You know, at the start of the war, there was this guy, Arestovich, which was super popular in Ukraine. And then suddenly he was exposed for the lying piece of shit he is, to then be now understood that he is now completely peddling Russian propaganda. Like now he's repeating Russian propaganda talking points. And being seen in Monaco. Wonder what he's doing in Monaco. So that's the point that I'm making, is that there's a lot of, like, Russia is pretty good at psychological warfare. We need to give them credit for what credit due. Their propaganda and psychological warfare has been on very, very high level, and it's been working against us. It's the same thing with nuclear weapons. Russian nuclear weapons are working every time you start considering questions like, is Russia going to use nuclear weapons? Every time you're asking yourself that question, that is, you're experiencing the effect of Russian nuclear weapons. Because Russian nuclear weapons and the way that they're using is not to strike with nuclear weapons, is to make you start asking the questions about Russian nuclear weapons. That's when you're experiencing the effect of that. So to sum up, whatever is happening at the front line right now is pretty insignificant. The truth about the front line is that Russia have not reached any first layer defenses. I can double check if I have it somewhere saved, but maybe, just maybe, I can find it. No, I don't have it saved. But there is a map with some of the known Ukrainian defense lines. And you can see that the Ukrainian defense lines are actually starting somewhere like around this area, or around this area. I don't remember precisely. So, and then we get people like asking is like, oh my God, how can Russia like penetrate Ukrainian borders so deep? And my question always is like, how deep? Like, why are you making all of these assumptions? My biggest problem with a lot of these analysts and people talking shit is that we are operating on maybe 5 to 10% of knowledge of Ukrainian resources, of Russian resources, or intelligence. And at least I personally, I don't have enough arrogance to claim that I know for sure why Ukraine does certain things and it doesn't do the other things. Because on the other spectrum, we have a lot of these pro-Ukrainian channels that are criticizing Ukraine, and they're criticizing Ukraine like, oh my God, on one side there's like criticizing, wow, like, and this is true story. No shit. They were criticizing why is Ukraine dedicating resources to build fortification in the Kharkiv region when there is no Russian activity, and that's an actual fucking story. To then now, as Russians attack, they are now why there are no fortification built in the Kharkiv fucking region. This is like sometimes it feels like I'm living in some kind of a crazy world, and I hope that with us looking at this and trying to kind of do step-by-step logical assumptions, thinking about the things that we do know for fact, that we can come down to some kind of a normalized perspective of the situation instead of jumping into conclusions with the panic, such as, for example, oh my God, there was no minefields on Ukrainian border, except for all of those videos, Russians being blown up by minefields, you know? That's what I'm trying to get to. So it's fine. So far, nothing important has happened on the front line. Russia decided to open a new front line. They could have used these thousands of troops anywhere else. They're going to try to draw out the resources from Ukraine. At least this is what I believe the most. So I think that we just need to support Ukraine more. That's my answer. That's my answer. Right now, we are seeing Ukraine just defending against Russians, trying to fight through some of the border regions that Ukraine just cannot hold. I don't know how else to put it in other terms. I hope it makes sense. Ask your questions. I'll try to answer what I missed. All right, let's go. Questions. I'm going to refresh, and there is a question that I didn't answer. Sorry for that. What does MAGA stand for? MAGA stand Make Ukraine Great Again. It's a meme because Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is like a big proponent of Make America Great Again, she got really pissed off by some other Republicans, and she was like, all of these other Republicans, I'm pretty sure that's exactly how she sounds. All of these other Republicans, they are like not real Republicans, and they don't want to make America great again. They actually want to make Ukraine great again. And then she shows like the MAGA hat, and the whole NAFO community just like, oh my God, new hat design, let's go. And yes, since then we got the MAGA hat now to make Ukraine great again. Yeah, you can get your own Make Ukraine Great Again hat on the Ukraine Matters shop. It's a good hat. Like I I never thought that I would like it as much as I do. All right. If Russia take, oh my God, Jesus, like here I was ranting about like that we should be fucking realistic, and I'm reading this question. I'm just fucking. I'm gonna lose a chat. So okay, if Russia, I'm not gonna read the name. Sorry, man. I don't wanna put you to shame or anything. If Russia takes Kiev, will the government move to Lviv and continue fighting, or will Ukraine surrender at that point? Like, why am I? Yes, yeah, yes. Ukraine will keep fighting. Fuck it. There we go. That's your answer. Like, let's be very clear. There is no chance of Russia taking Kiev. Zero, nada, none, no, not a single one. No option. The force is not there. There is no support. Russia would need a whole fleet of Sith Lords to try to take Kiev. Try. Not even take. Did I come at the rant time? Yes. You came at the facepalm time. Do you know why nobody speaks about Trump narcissism and psychopathy with Dr. Brady Exley? I don't know who Dr. Brandy Exley is. I speak about Trump sometimes. Vote blue this coming election. You can vote Republican once Republican Party normalizes. And guys, important thing. So recently, the Marjorie Trader Greene's motion to dismiss the Speaker of the House failed, and she was booed in the chamber. So, as I said, I do feel that the Republican Party is slowly finding itself back up. Again, I know that there is a lot of people that are supporting Democrats in my community, and I know it's a huge rivalry. Like the camp is really, really hard. But for me, I'm a centrist. I don't have a stake of it. Like the only thing that I care is right now Ukraine, and this channel is about Ukraine. So that's why I hate fucking MAGA, because they are anti-Ukraine. So and the other part of MAGA is like deluded. Is like Georgie, we're not anti-Ukraine. Like I am all pro-Ukraine, but I'm gonna vote Trump. It's like, yeah, you just want death for Ukraine. Just don't vote. Just like if that's what you think, you just don't vote. So I'm hoping that there is a lot of support, because I approve democracy. I approve plurality of opinion. I approve that we have opinions that you share. Hell, I want you to share when you feel that I'm wrong. If your well-argumented argument that I'm wrong is there, that's great. It's good to have different opinions. But our governments and democracies are fragile. And this fragile, like in these fragile things, can be exploited by the anti-democratic forces. And MAGA is an anti-democratic force. Like Putin, Trump literally wants to build a Hungarian type state with a semi-working, with authoritarian leader at the head. That is an anti-democratic power, and I will fight it to the end of my existence. Yeah, exactly. Gen Consensus is on point. Ukraine aid passed over 74% support from the House. So we see that all of these Trump pretenders, they do represent a very, very small minority of people. So yeah, if you're Republican, good on you. Like be Republican, it's fine. Like there's nothing wrong with having your opinions, and you might not agree with the Democratic part. It's fine. But at these elections, like something more is on the line, and I hope that you will consider voting blue. Joe Biden is definitely not ideal. Hell, I'm pretty sure for a lot of Democrats, Joe Biden is not ideal. But he's a hell of a lot better than anything else, than the orange guy. All right. My U.S. Politics segment, like also the, like, you know what's the MAGA people is? MAGA people are the most thin-skinned, sensitive people, because as soon as I talk something about the MAGA, like instantly, like I hear, like, typing. It's like, will you shut up about the U.S. politics? You don't know shit. And like type. They're like this, the most sensitive, thin-skinned people. Like for them, like any criticism of their glorious leader or like their cultism is just like, he talked bad about us. Jesus fuck. Like, can you grow a pair? Do you know they want to raise Kharkiv like they did with Aleppo? Unfortunately, it seems so. But I actually, how big is Aleppo? Aleppo size. Oh, I want to know. So Aleppo was 182 square kilometers. Or was it the province? Wait. Wait. Was it the city of Aleppo or was it? Yeah, area of Aleppo is 182 square kilometers, whereas Kharkiv is 350 square kilometers. So Kharkiv is about 2 times bigger than Aleppo city. So like it's huge. Kharkiv is freaking huge, and it's dense urban. Besides that, the situation where Aleppo was, where it was like basically encircled and pummeled to no end with little to no resistance, is not the same with Kharkiv. Like, we need to understand that Ukrainians are resisting quite well. So the aerial bombs that Russia is dropping are nasty and they can do a lot of damage. But it's pretty far fetched to expect that Ukrainians will not put like any air defense in the area to prevent the bombing of Kharkiv. There is obviously a lot of damage that Russians can and will do and are actually doing, and specifically terror, like when they're striking civilians every day. But it's not enough. Like, to raise a city, you really need to, like, use aviation nonstop. You need to use big ass aviation bombs nonstop. KLW World News, welcome, man. Nice seeing you here. How's your channel? I've heard something that your channel was supposed to close or not. Is that still a thing? Tell me that it's better, please. We need some good news today. Does Ukraine will have to force Russia to overextend again to throw them back on a counteroffensive like in the beginning? I think it's a bit early to talk about counteroffensive. I don't know what Ukraine will be doing. And this is again, remember, like this pro-Ukrainian crowd that I was talking to you about, because this was Zaluzhny's plan. Like, the overextension of Russian resources was Zaluzhny's plan, whereas supposedly the Western U.S. military plan, and so, as I understood, Syrskyi's plan was that they need to strike at the one point. So it's unclear, the situation, like, and maybe I'm wrong. Like, it's because we have only fragmented knowledge of what specifically happened in that discussion. But the point is, it was Zaluzhny that approved this overextension plan, and it didn't work. Potentially, it's going to be a different plan, because Ukraine didn't have aviation back then. Hopefully, by the next Ukrainian offensive, they will have working aviation. What's going on with Ukrainian mobilization? It's ongoing. Why do people expect Ukraine to build fortifications on the Kharkiv border under the threat of Russian artillery? Johnny, it's the same reason why people are asking, like, what will happen when Russia takes Kyiv? It's inability to just think like one step critically. How long before Ukraine actually mobilizes enough reinforcements? Will they send civilians with 4 weeks training straight to the front line? Gen consensus. So with regards to 4 weeks training, that is specifically what has been addressed in the recent mobilization law, and I have direct quotes from many people on the front lines that have been knowing people that are coming in to the front lines, and they were all received proper trainings. Some people say up to 3 to 6 months. So a lot of training is happening, and it's a proper training, not just 4 weeks. And to answer the first part, how long will Ukraine actually mobilize enough? That is a great question. It's unclear for me. I think a lot more mobilization force is needed. But again, I'm not arrogant enough to know that about why certain things are done and why certain things are not done. But Ukraine does need additional manpower. That's pretty obvious. And the expectation is that more mobilization procedures will be launched. Newman, thank you so much for being for 11 months here. But we love your rants, Georgie. Yeah, I love my rants as well. I mean, I don't love them. Like, it's not like I evaluate them, but like sometimes I just want to yell at something, and mostly it's the screen. Will you shave your beard when Ukraine will get decent peace deal? No, Michał. The fact that the reason I'm having my beard is because once I shaved my beard, and I have a very weak chin. Like I have like super weak chin. Like it's a very shitty chin line. I don't know if I can show you but like my face ends here. So I look like a goofy ass MF when I'm shaved. I look like not like a proper man. I look like a baby child. And like the only thing I could like intimidate or be knowledgeable about is probably how to, I don't know. I don't know what is now considered non-masculine. Pick one. And my wife saw me and she's like, never do that again. Never. Never do that. So I'm not shaving my beard. Well, at least until I'm married still. When I will not be married, maybe then. So I love my wife. Is Russia spending 20 billion per day on the war? That's a wild number. 20 billion rubles? Maybe. I don't know. At least she didn't leave you right away. It was very close. It was very close, Dr. YouTuber. Like no shit. It was like real bad. What's the latest with partisans and separatists on Russian soil? Uh, Very limited. Again, sounds. I don't put a lot of expectations. I've put some expectation previously on the partisan activity in Russia, but Russians really suck at dealing with their problems. Like why people of Georgia can like how people of Georgia can stand up for their rights and 15% of the fucking country of Georgia can come to one city to make sure that the government hears them. How come it's possible to do in Georgia and Russians still cannot figure out whether they want to resist Putin or not? Like it's so hilarious. It's incredible. But I'm not going to talk about Russian opposition. It's a like I don't have enough jokes or care to talk about it. Gee, has Ukraine gotten relief yet from the US? And if yes, is it helping? Yes, it is helping. Yes, it is coming. It is reporting. I'm really glad because it's so far it's very fragmented. But you already like have you heard recently about anything about Avdiivka direction? Like let's reality check. Have you heard about any major Russian advances in the Avdiivka direction? Hmm? No? Okay. That's the help. That's the help. And the units from the front line are saying, hey, it's got better. But if it was like before, like it was like 1 to 10 that Russia has the advantage, now it's closer to like, 5 to 10. So it's already a lot easier, but it's still like not the advantage that Ukraine, not the advantage, but not supply that Ukraine needs to stop Russians. And it's only specific parts of the front line. There are still fragmented parts that Ukraine cannot really do. William Parrish, do you think mobilization should have started earlier? I know you said ongoing, or were they conscripting? I just hope they're taking the full advantage of NATO training capacity. Yes, NATO training capacity is full all the time. That's something I know for a fact. I have people that are in training and were in training in NATO countries. With regards to mobilization, it has been ongoing all the time. The problem was that the mobilization law that Ukraine had was the old Soviet-style mobilization law that Ukraine had. And it caused a couple of really bad things. Most notably, the lack of activity in mobilization for Ukraine from the normal population could have been kind of driven to two major factors. Factor number one, people didn't want to go to the front lines right away, whereas the earlier mobilization law basically stated that, hey, you can go to the front line without training. As soon as you're mobilized, you're pretty much good to go. That's the old Soviet-style mobilization law. Now, the new mobilization law is supposed to allow you to get proper training before you can even try to get deployed anywhere close to the front line. It's like mandatory now. Beyond that, the second point was that it was not clear for people whether or not they will be assessed for their skills. Like there's a lot of people that are, for example, no IT or good driver or can fly a plane or stuff like that. And it was a lot of the assessments that were not made at the mobilization point. So at mobilization point, essentially, by the old law, you just get mobilized into one of the brigades, and it doesn't really matter who you are or what you do or why. Instead, now it's a more nuanced approach where people are being evaluated, their data is being assessed, who they are, what they're working for. It's also now going to be done electronically. That's why Ukrainians are now coming in to renew their data. And we will see that slowly but surely Ukrainians hopefully will get more like, because like one of the normal stories, like which also has not been assessed, is the willingness to fight. So a lot of the earlier law mobilization was done based on the number of people in certain settlements or certain areas, and they would mobilize people based on that area. Whereas this led up to a situation where we had people that says, hey, I really want to fight, I want to support Ukraine, and he would go to the office of Ukrainian mobilization office and say, I want to fight, and they will say, sorry, our region is full, you will not go. And then they would grab some people out from streets from the other mobilization. That's because how the mobilization worked beforehand. Now it's a lot more nuanced. So now there's going to be a lot, hopefully, they will be able to find a lot more people that are actually willing to fight despite not being dependent on where people live geographically. Yes. It's just a very, like before it was a very, very outdated law. So that's why it was kind of like the mobilization was going, but because there was so many problems with it, it was kind of like, let's try to do minimal before we go full ham. We'll see. I really hope that more people will get mobilized. Hey, Georgios, I've heard that some NATO countries talking about defending Ukrainian airspace on the west on the anti-air. Thoughts? Well, I think that they should have been covering Ukraine from the first day. That's my thought. David Berman, as an electrician with a utility and high voltage experience, is there a way Ukraine could use me to help rebuild and fix the electrical grid? Where do I apply? Or who do I talk to? Your best bet, David, firstly, I can ask. You can write me at Ukraine Matters 2022 at gmail.com. It's my YouTube public email, so I'm reading that one as much as I can, but I have like 780 unread mails, so if I haven't answered, sorry for that. But I can try to look into this, but also your best bet is to reach out to the Ukrainian embassy, first and foremost. This might be very helpful. Have you seen Defense Minister Umerov's commentary on mobilization today? No, not yet. I would want to watch it. I will put a note for myself to find out about this. Thank you. Thank you for bringing it to my attention. Will be something to look out for. How come Ukraine... Okay, sorry. Hrvoje Svetec. How come Ukraine mobilization begins at 25 years? Mean they fighting for their existence? Should they mobilize 19, 20 years old and update them ready to train, etc.? Okay. Maybe. I am not in charge. Look, it's the same question that you ask about, well, what about these guys that escaped Ukraine? I have a question, like to each of one, like everyone that is criticizing mobilization in Ukraine. Do you want to die? Do you want to die? That's the question that I want to ask you. So whenever we're talking about what about like the people that escaped Ukraine and so on, it's like, well, they just don't want to die. Pretty much anyone on the front line, I'm pretty sure they don't want to die. There's very little people that really want to go to the front line to make sure that they die. That's maybe like a couple of people or something. Everyone is afraid, but the fear is not a equal scale. Fear is something that is different for everyone. So when we're talking about why don't we just allow young people to die, I want to ask you why. Why do you want Ukrainian young men to die? The reason is that Ukraine is a big country and there is a lot of resources. And I'm pretty sure that even with 25 years old as a mark, they can get enough men. At least I'm hoping to. Like, I know the easier option is like, hey, let's just grab like 18, 19, 20 years old and just stuff them into tanks and send them to the front lines. But what about the country? Who are you fighting for? You know, this has been a big criticism of Zelensky, but I find myself compelled by some of the arguments. If there are people, and if there's enough people, and that's why I'm insisting on the quantity of mobilized, if there is enough people to spare the young generation of Ukrainians to survive, to rebuild the country, that's worth fighting for, is it not? I feel it really hard in myself to make myself say that Ukraine just needs to send more men to die, young men. So I think the response should be adequate to the needs of the army. If estimates suggest that 25 plus years old is enough of a pool to draw from to get necessary amounts that the Ukraine needs, and that's the important part, then I think it is fine. Then I think it is fine. If it's not, then Ukraine will probably have to draft more. But I don't think that this should be the first knee-jerk reaction to do right away. Oh my God, we got invaded. Let's just kill all of our young people. So I cannot take this question and just say, yeah, of course they should. No. There is a problem with Ukraine not having enough manpower. It's an actual problem and it needs solution. And Ukraine needs to be realistic. It shouldn't be like the age. But if there is an option to preserve the Ukrainian next generation, I think that option needs to be taken. If Russia, PM, sorry, no, OS asks, if Russia puts so many soldiers in one place, I guess Ukraine knows due to due to drones, so why aren't they sending HIMARS to the barracks? Some hundreds could be terminated at once. Oh my god. This is not RPG. Like, it's not 50,000 units stacked on one place on top of each other and then they are like marched. So right now is summer. The northern Kharkiv area is very, very dense in forests. Majority of the offensives that the majority of advances that Russia is doing, Russians are right now moving on the North Kharkiv, is happening in relatively small groups where Ukrainians just cannot fully target them like operationally, and then it's getting to the point where they need to be detected and then destroyed, and it's not always possible, especially if it's a small group. And then we get to the core point that I already fucking ranted about today, which is, what do you think lack of resources means? If you say just like, hey, why don't we HIMARS these guys? Why don't we have our scouting drones fly over Russian defended airspace and then scout and destroy these 50,000 guys with HIMARS? That is a HIMARS and a scouting drone and dedication of resources that Ukraine does not have. So I'm going to ask you once fucking again, what do you think lack of resources means? Lack of resources is compromised. It's when you cannot do things that you should have been doing otherwise. Ukraine is not having enough. It's like, so every time you think about, hey, why don't Ukraine does something? Not enough resources is the first answer that should come up to your minds. Even before you start typing it into this chat, even before you start trying to Google it or whatever, at any moment, like in the middle of the night, you're fucking waking up. It's like, why did the Zelensky dismiss Zaluzhny? And before you even go into the all discussions about why and so on, your first answer should be, because Ukraine doesn't have enough resources. That's how ingrained that should be. Like, it's the same question, like, because we can extrapolate the same questions like, hey, why don't Ukraine just kills all of the Russians? It's like Ukraine has the weapons, right? Ukraine has the HIMARS. So if they target every Russian with HIMARS, then there would be no Russians. I solved the war. This guy right here. I figured it out. I think this is the beginning of the end of Russia. This is the last desperate attempt. This is like all in poker. Russia knows that it will lose, so they go all in. This reminds me of World War I, 1980. Epic and legendary. Yeah, I guess it could be looked at, but I am reserving some of that judgment a little bit. Like I am not sure how far Russia is ready to go, how far Russians are ready to go, because how much support Russia will have, if North Korea starts just sending all of the weapons to Russia, if China starts sending weapons to Russia, this can go on for a while. So I'm careful. Russia itself definitely is heading for a complete fucking disaster. But there are very pessimistic scenarios as well, and we cannot, as much as I think that these pessimistic scenarios are not realistically feasible, we cannot just outright dismiss them, if you know what I mean. Mayo, do you think Russia might intervene in Georgia military to quell the protests? It might. It's possible. It has happened before. But it's pretty much going to be a civil war in Georgia right away then. Which might not be too bad for Russia. Gishard Rer, hey Georgie, could you please provide an update on Russian oil refineries? How many of them have been damaged, put out of use, and how much is that affecting Russian economics and military capabilities? Military, never a lot. It's not never going to be a lot for military because majority of damage that Ukraine is doing is not to the either raw oil or the lower grade oil products like diesel fuel. Those things Russia can produce, and Russia can produce in quite high enough capacity so they can supplement their military, no problem. What's going to suffer is the Russian economy. It's going to put additional squeeze. But Russian economy is still pretty strong. It will have trouble. And the answer is so far is still the same. It's at least a year and a half or 2 years before Russia is going to start feeling the burn. There's still money in the National Wealth Fund in Russia. And that National Wealth Fund essentially is a war chest for this war. And so whenever there is a problem, either in economy or military or whatever else, the money out of that war chest is coming out. So the strikes against these oil refineries, you should not look at them and expect that, oh my God, the Russian oil is just going to stop flowing. That's not what's going to happen. It's never going to happen. But it's going to put additional pressure on that war chest. And it's going to add up to the total faster finish of this war. Make Ukraine great again. Yes. Why have Ukraine... Oh my God, it's again this question. Janssen, why have Ukraine not crafted napalm MLRS missiles to use against infantry? I have checked. Napalm and other fire weapons are not banned against military targets, aka or CS. Okay. So first answer. What is the first answer to that question? Like, guys, we just talked about this. What is the first answer to the question of why Ukraine doesn't do X? I'm waiting, chat. I'm not going to continue this stream. Not enough resources. Excellent. Yes. Not enough resources. That's the first answer that should be popping up into your mind. So we need to understand that, like, to develop, produce weapons, if you don't have enough resources, you're giving up on something else. There is so much other shit that Ukraine should be doing but cannot do because they don't have enough resources, then going into developing some kind of experimental fuel-based napalm missiles is a whole another level. Also, there are fuel-based missiles. Have you heard of something that is called... Oh, I'm actually going to just show you. Have you seen this guy? So this is the Russian heavy what is the heavy fire system called TOS, Soncepek. So this thing, like all of these cartridges that you see here, so they're filled with fuel. So these missiles, it's not like your regular multi-rocket launch system. So these missiles, they fly out and they have double detonator. So the first detonator explodes the missile and it spreads the gasoline in a huge radius. And it creates like this aerosol effect over a huge radius that goes in every corner, that gets on every flammable object and everything. And then the second detonator explodes and this whole huge cloud just goes boom. They're sometimes called vacuum bombs because of this, all of this aerosol, once it burns down, it burns all of the oxygen, so the oxygen rushes in, and there's like also like essentially a vacuum explosion, sort of. Like, it's not really, but like, you get my point. The point is, the problem that Russia encountered with this system is that its effective range is like a couple kilometers. That's not a lot. That's not a lot at all. So as it turns out, when you fire like a full missile that carries a lot of heavy fuel, it's a heavy missile. So fuel is not as efficient, or maybe in this case napalm, is not as efficient as to fire an explosive or shrapnel explosive. So question is, if there has been already a weapon that has been used and is proven not to be as efficient as it's possible, maybe, just maybe, one should not dedicate their resources to try to create some kind of experimental warfare, and instead, for example, make more Gimler's rockets that have proven themselves to be pretty good. I hope that answers the question. But also not enough resources, yes. If Russia realizes this complete disaster that you mentioned, and one I agree with, will it have bad consequences for the wider world? For example, will Putin hit self-destruct? Oh my God, Jesus Christ, fucking self-destruct your pants, man. Seriously. Like, how much afraid are you? It's like, oh my God, if we win Russia so hard, Putin is gonna nuke it. Ah! Like, I talk a lot about how fear should not be the driving emotion for us to try to do anything. Why are you so afraid? Why are you so driven by fear? Why do you like sitting with shit in your pants? You know? Because this is what it sounds like. It's like people saying, oh my God, if Putin is gonna lose too hard, then he will make sure that we are not alive and we cannot live. Therefore, we should live with shit and piss in our pants every day for the rest of our lives. And kids, my kids and your kids and our kids should also live with piss and shit in their pants as well. And they should go to work and they should feel uncomfortable. They should also smell really bad. Why? Because otherwise Putin can use nuclear threat. That's the level of discussion. That's the level. You are ready to give up everything that we stand for. Everything that my granddad died for, everything that our ancestor fought for, all the democracy, because you are too afraid of Mr. Putin. Why is fear driving you? Why? The major song that I play right at the start of this stream, the last song that I always play before I start the stream, it's the song about that the Ukrainians have no fear anymore, that they have nothing to fear anymore. But every time that we try to overcome this, and I try to explain, there's still people coming up and says, Georgie, I am afraid. Everyone is afraid. Everyone is afraid. I am afraid of dying. All right? I don't want to die. But I am not ready to be shitting in my pants because Putin can destroy us all. Fear is not the driving force for me, and it shouldn't be for you. And it definitely shouldn't be for you when you're talking about what kind of future should we have. So all of these questions, oh my God, but Putin can nuke. Sorry, the smell is just too strong from these questions. When have Ukraine not won yet? Lil Bobs. Okay, so question. Lil Bobs asks question. When, why, it's like it says, when have Ukraine not won? But I'm expecting that the question is, why have Ukraine not won yet? What is the answer? Chat, you know the answer. I'm pretty sure Lil Bobs is trolling a bit because usually he's okay. He's just playing it on. I think he's just like, why Ukraine haven't won yet? It's, yeah. Lack of something. Yeah, not enough resource. Exactly. Yes, I'm pretty sure Lil Bobs is just joking around. It's fine. Audun, hey Ukraine Matters, do you know current Ukrainian artillery expenditure per week versus expenditure before the approval of American aid? I haven't seen the full calculation numbers. I've seen some. I'm keeping them posted. I am looking for the confirmation. It's growing right now, but it hasn't plateaued yet, right? So I have some numbers, but it's not like even. Specifically because also on different parts of the front line, the expenditure is different. So I don't have a concrete answer yet, unfortunately. Sorry. Kylo Kift. The Budapest Memorandum was agreed in 1994. Russia has broken it. Why shouldn't Ukraine regain possessions of nuclear weapons? I think the Ukraine should, but it's like it doesn't solve anything for Ukraine. So imagine let's imagine a scenario, right? So this is one of those questions where I also think that if we just think one step ahead, we get great benefit. So imagine Ukraine gets nuclear weapons. What then? Because then we get, it's like, well, Ukraine is now nuclear power, so Russia is now fighting a nuclear power. Okay? So it's nuclear heads against nuclear heads. So that means if Ukraine uses nuclear weapons, does it mean that Russia can use their nuclear weapons on Ukraine? Because now they're going to be justified, right? You see, like Ukraine can never get like enough nukes to be mutual destruction. The only kind of thing that it could achieve is that Russia would not use nukes, but we would be essentially at the same place as Ukraine is now. So I don't see how, in the situation that Ukraine finds itself in right now, dedicating resources to building, maintaining, and having this nuclear arsenal is really beneficial. So as a weapon on the battlefield, compared to what Russia has, it's not effective, it's not efficient, and it's not going to produce result. So there is very little effect that Ukraine can extract from the nuclear weapons right away. Sorban Harshe, hi from India, full support to Ukraine, Slava Ukraini. Thank you, my friend. Why not draft women as well? Women can be just as good as men. Drone operators, HIMARS operators. We actually are in contact with the women veterans, and they are doing drone brigade relatively soon. So the campaign after our next campaign for the donation to the Ukrainian military, we will actually do specifically for you women drone brigades. Not brigades, but women drone units. So very interesting that you raised it up, Doug brother. Thank you so much. S. Moore, thanks so much for $10. Pick a good one from the chat. MAGA. Yeah. Yeah, volunteering. Women are free to join Ukrainian military. There are tens of thousands of women that are fighting right now in Ukrainian military. Yeah, no worries, man. James, it's not about you shitting pants. Like, some people get really offended because I talk very personally with the people, but it's never like at you. It's just how I understand, like, because I always imagine, like I'm speaking one-to-one with someone. It helps me cope with how I am able to talk, because I'm really bad at talking with the public or anything like this. So it wasn't like at you, like I didn't want to, like, for you to feel shitting your pants. I mean, in general, that people that really take too much into their fear is driving us to a worse world. And I just want to underline that. What effect will Ukraine or Russia have from the Russian blowing up second dam or the other day? As far as I saw, that dam, it was already kind of open, so it was mostly essentially a bridge. It's that bridge was already blown up beforehand, and it was rebuilt, and now it's been blown up again. Well, it's just going to complicate logistics at this point for now. But if you see the video, then you will see that the level of the water on both sides was equal. So that dam was completely open. Okay, couple of last questions. We've been doing this for 2 hours. This is perfect. MGSSG writes, we lived through, some of us, the Cold War. Life is for living. Hiding in a corner is a type of living and not a good one. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's because, like, I love democracy so much. I love the opportunities. Like, democracy is the worst form of government, except for all of the other ones. And I still remember some of the Soviet times, and I still remember some of the post-Soviet times. And literally, like, I might be afraid of dying and everything, but I would be okay going. And if like I already told this and I'll say it again, once if Russia invades Latvia, I will go right away to join and do my part for sure. How long Ukraine will accumulate the power before an actual push? A speculation no one knows for real. Yeah, Stepan, it's too early to say. Right now, Ukraine is in a huge resource deficit, and I hope we now get to that answer. And we should not expect it anytime soon, at least not until 2025. And I'm hoping, and on 2025, given that the flow of resources will be stable, that we're not going to get suddenly Trump coming in and cutting all of the aid for Ukraine, okay? So let's be very, very clear about our projections, because otherwise people are going to come in, I watched your video from like a year and a half ago, and you said like Ukraine is heading for a victory, And yes, given the circumstances that were there, they were. How dare you to offend G? Yeah, for sure. I'm well known to be a very non-offending person, you know? No, it's because like the person wrote me like that he's truly like he didn't mean it, so it's fine. Will Europe in 2 years be able to support Ukraine enough on its own if Trump is elected? Adamantium, in majority of scenarios, yes. But there are certain negative scenarios that I just cannot rule out. So I'm going to be very, very pedantic. But yes, majority of scenarios, Russia is going to be running on real bad trouble in a year and a half, 2 years. All right. Lovely. Thank you so much for asking all of these questions, guys. It was super interesting. I'm sorry if I missed some of your questions. We're not going to be ending with some low-level humor today. Let's leave it for some other time. I wanna kind of introduce you a little bit, give you a sneak peek. I'm gonna make it as part of video tomorrow, but we are starting our next campaign with NAFO 69 Sniffing Brigade. I'm going to again talk about this in details tomorrow. And it's this time, I'm going to post a link. You can read it out, but I will be talking about it tomorrow. So basically this time we're gathering some some money for the, I believe it's 143rd Brigade. We got in close contact, and this is a new one, something we never did before. We're basically like in direct contact with the actual brigade, and they want us to get them the Baba Yaga drone. I'm not sure if you've heard about this. So Russians, so there is this big Ukrainian drone, which is like a 8 propeller copter, huge one. It carries like four 80 millimeter mortar shells on it, and has night vision devices. So it flies during the night, and it always destroys Russian equipment. And it's like, it's been very, very folklorized in the Russian occupiers communities. So they call this Baba Yaga, from the Russian, essentially, boogeyman. Like it's an analog of boogeyman. That boogeyman lives in this hut, as you can see this on a patch on chicken legs. Don't ask, it's really weird. But yeah, so they call this drone Baba Yaga, and this is the drone that will be going to the units. And we're working with this guy. His name is Sanath. He's like a movie maker. He worked with Sukhonimus channel before, and he's now reached out to us. And we're gonna get the Baba Yaga drone for them, and we're gonna update this, and I'm gonna make a full presentation in my next video. But if you want to have a sneak peek, just if you want to get a patch early or something like this, please do. Anyways, this is a new campaign. Love you all, guys. So we're gonna do everything for Ukraine. I'll see you next time. Love you all. See you.